Well, welcome everyone for our very first episode of A Founder's Journey. My name is Michael Drummond. I'm your host today, and I'm so excited to have Paul with me, Paul Jones. And this is all part of the Tech Founder Circle. It's one of the things we do as part of that circle. We interview all the different founders, and Paul is one of those. And so Paul is he's both the founder of Bridgio and also the chief community officer of NeoIDO, who was one of the creators of the Founder Circle. So with that, I just, Paul, so grateful to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
And so let's just get right into it. Let's talk about your background. What got you? I mean, I know you've done a lot of different things in your life. You're an entrepreneur from the get-go. So let's kind of back up a little bit and talk about that.
Well, so a couple things. I've always enjoyed getting people together for fun stuff. I remember back in college, we kind of took over this thing called a Dirty 30. And what it was we would do these 30-minute dance parties. So Dirty 30 minutes. The dirty part of it referred to electronic dance music. So don't confuse that with like Dirty Dancing. I told my mom we were going to have a Dirty 30 at my wedding. And she's like, if there's any dirty dancing, I'm going to shut the wedding down. No, it wasn't like that. It was just, we'd show up at our house for 30 minutes and my roommate was a DJ and we just play some sweet tunes. And we started getting shut down by the cops a lot. Like we noticed that the cops would show up about an hour and a half into the party. And so what we started to do is we're like, oh, we got to do 30-minute. If we can stick to 30 minutes, then by the time the cops show up, nothing's happening. And so that's why we started the 30-minute thing. And anyway, it became, I think they're still doing it at the university that I went to. And so anyway, it got pretty big. I would send out a text. I'd say this date, this time, here's where when the Dirty 30 is going to happen. And we just had people from all over the place. I mean, we had the athletes showing up. We had the nerds showing, we had everybody showing up. And one of the kind of like hallmarks of the party was that anytime someone walked in to the front door, everyone would stop and be like, oh, and just welcome them with that positivity. And so we had created this really fun, positive environment. And we ended up, branching that brand out to silent dance parties during finals week. So everyone would show up at the library with headphones on and listen to whatever music they wanted. And just, so it was silent, but you were listening to music and everyone would kind of dance. And ever since then, after I went into after I got graduated from college, I started to go to these events, like symposiums and trade shows and whatnot. And I think they just sucked. They just were not fun. And I remember I was at SaaStr 5 years ago, listening to Eric Wu, the CEO of Zoom, and he was giving a great presentation. And I was in a room full of entrepreneurs and founders. And I looked to my left and my right. And although he was saying some great information, I'm like, you know what? The people that are directly around me, these are the people that I want to be talking to. These are the people that have the most relevant, they're going through the same thing I'm going through. They probably have the most relevant advice that they could give me. And when you go to conferences and when you go to events and things like that, you don't get to talk to people like that. It's kind of funny to me that everyone goes, we all shuffle into a room and then we all face one person and we listen to one person. So my thought was, how could I unlock the people that are around you? You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a specialist to be able to give good perspective and share your experience. And so it kind of like, it was a merge. I've also been in the outdoor guiding industry for 10 plus years, namely like a river guide for 5 years. And I thought if I could put together experiences where people feel like they're going on a journey and it's a journey of getting into real authentic conversations, like that could change the world. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and that became more important. So we started to see mental health issues increasing. We started, depression and all sorts of stuff started to increase. Why is this happening? Well, the research turns out that it's because people are isolated. And the more isolated you are, the harder it is. Like the reason why we get in groups and we talk to people and stuff is they keep us in check. When we have a crazy idea and someone like gives us a roll the eyes, like that's a signal to us like, hey, we need to maybe check that thought. So human interaction is extremely important, and we live in a world where human interaction is highly, highly curated, highly. So why not go off script? Why not create collisions of people? And so started to look at that and started to create experiences and build virtual experiences that help people connect. And then, diving more into the research, started to find that really innovation, we call this innovation capital, and it's really coined by Mark Benioff, but this concept that innovation is driven by having access to people that are outside of your social cliques, that come from many different social cliques. So we call these people brokers. Okay. So like Steve Jobs, everyone says Steve Jobs was a great marketer. Yes. But more so than that, he was actually a broker. What does that mean? That means that in Silicon Slopes, it's so funny when you listen or read his biography by Walter Isaacson. So Walter Isaacson wrote it. A lot of people report that he was hard to work with and he stole their ideas. Well, what Steve Jobs was doing was he had access to so many different social groups that he was able to take, a higher view and put the puzzle pieces together and ultimately create what was Apple. So that's what drove, and that's what enabled him to be so innovative. When you look at Edison versus Tesla, Edison is another classic example of someone we call a broker. He died with significantly more patents than Tesla did. Although Tesla was a genius, Edison was more well-connected. He was able to get more things done. He was able to, if you look at his patents and what they expand so many different types of innovations. And so the problem that I see right now is that COVID and where we were already going was we were moving toward isolation. And by doing that, mental health problems increase, innovation decreases, people feel disconnected. People love working from home, but they feel disconnected from the organization. So I've set out to solve that problem. And where that problem lies is in building communities and creating experiences. I think of myself as like a people chemist. If I can get the right people together into a room, boom, you get great conversation, you get great perspective, you build new relationships, and you never know where those relationships are going to go. So I felt like we need more products and technologies that really help people authentically connect with each other.
Well, I love your story. So tell me, I mean, I'm sure like all founders, it hasn't always been a smooth road. I mean, can you talk about some of that type of stuff? What's been some of the hiccups, the bumps?
Oh man, it's as everyone listening probably knows, when you see an opportunity, when you see something that you feel called to solve, it's a very interesting relationship, because I feel like the universe, it gives you this idea, and then the universe tests you to see if you have enough balls and enough integrity to keep that idea and take it. So when I started to see this 2 years ago, and I looked, to where we are at now, it has been hard. Obviously, it's been hard, but the first thing always is that you see an opportunity, you try to tell other people what you're seeing, and most of the time you feel like you're crazy. Because people don't really see what you see. And so that is kind of like the founder's journey, is you see a future that exists, and you feel kind of crazy. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've thought like, is this a real thing? People don't seem to get this. And it takes a while for you to be talking with people and figuring out where their mind is and how to help map their mind into what you're seeing. And that takes a long time. And so you got to wade through the valley of death, so to speak. You got to wade through that hard, rough time. And all the while, the universe is testing you to see if, hey, you have this idea. Are you really the one that is going to be trusted with bringing this into the world? And I remember for whatever reason, we started working with a bunch of clients, and each of the clients, not each, but many of them that I started to work with, were offering me crazy, awesome jobs. Like, hey, you're doing this. This is awesome. We love what you're doing. Do you want to come work full time for us? And I called up my buddy who's a serial entrepreneur, and I just said, hey, does this ever happen to you? And he's like 100%. But he said, that is the journey of an entrepreneur, and that's the journey of a founder is, yeah, you're going to get all kinds of opportunities. Yeah, you're going to get, people that come in and want to acquire you. And he's like, you have to have a solid vision. You have to have a solid mission, and you got to stick to it, because if you don't, then when those opportunities come up, you don't have a backdrop to say, does this fit into this to my mission or not? And that was a really cool moment, because going along this journey, you feel alone a lot of the times, and a lot of the times you just want to tap out. You just you want to tap out and go back into the matrix, so to speak. But that was some really good advice that I got from a friend that really helped me at that point.
So I mean, what would be your if was there a point when you're like, man, I am so ready? Other than that one, did you have somebody you go to? Or did you find when you had those times when you're ready to tap? What did you do? What kept you going through? Put you through those times?
I think, a couple things. First, just having been there before, I haven't started a tech company before, but I've started and sold other businesses. And I knew that there is always this time period where it's going to be a little bit rough. So I kind of knew that going into it. You'd have your bad days and just be like, you know what, that was expected. We just need to keep going. But then, the fun thing about doing this and sharing the future of what you see with people is that, for whatever reason, the right people get attracted to what you're doing. And so I was really fortunate in the beginning to find a colleague that, I told him, hey, this is what I'm doing. And he said, hey, I believe in what you're doing. And he has been with me right there. And that has been awesome. And so whenever we're both down, we can kind of, pivot off of each other. And so I'm really grateful for that, because, you end up not feeling alone. And that's why I think it's so important to share, to keep going and keep talking about what you're doing. You'll get better at it. You always do. But it also helps you meet the people that see the same things that you do, and it builds that momentum.
Yeah. So if there was be one piece of advice, somebody who's thinking about, hey, I'm thinking about starting a tech business or whatever, what would you say to them at this point? What would be what would be your best advice you think you give?
That is such a good question. And the way that I would answer that is, I think that the whole idea behind starting something is it the right thing to put your eggs in a basket for? So spending time on that. And a lot of times I think I really, really like Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I highly recommend that book, because he talks about how, you don't want to make the mistake of thinking, what the world needs and the product that you're going to build, and go out and build it. You've got to build a minimum viable product, put it out there and get feedback. And you'll be very, very surprised at what comes back. So that's happened to me many times, actually. The first business that I ever created, I thought it needed to go a certain way. And I had a mentor who taught at the business school. And she said, Paul, you need to build a business plan. And I thought, that is so dumb. I do not need to build a freaking business plan. And she's like, no, you do. And she owned many different restaurant businesses. And so she gave me a template. She made it easy for me to do. And I went through it, and my business completely transformed. It morphed, because I realized that the way that I had set it up in my head before was not going to give me the margins that I needed, and was going to be much more risk and much more difficult to scale. And so it was the same idea, but it changed to be more efficient. So to give you an idea, I started a paddleboarding tour company, and my original idea was I was going to take people down the river. I was in the Midwest. This is when paddleboarding was just blowing up in California, so I knew it was coming to the Midwest. I was actually out paddleboarding on a lake, and literally, this is crazy, in the Midwest, cars were stopping to watch me. It's like they'd never seen that before, and that's when I got the idea, like, oh, I need to start a paddleboarding company. So anyway, I was just coming back from being a river guide, and the Missouri River is right there where I was living. And so the idea was, okay, we'll put on the river, we'll float down the river on paddleboards, and then we'll take off, and I'll take people back up to their cars. Well, as I went through the business plan, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to hire a driver. I'm going to have to buy a car. I'm going to have to buy insurance for the travelers in that car. That all by itself just totally ate away. And you know, I was going to have to charge something like $75 a person. I didn't think the market was going to, you know, that the market wasn't going to accept that. And so I went through the whole business plan, calculated my margins, all that stuff, and realized this isn't going to work. So then I ended up changing it and cut all of that out. I cut out the van, I cut out the driver, and tried to make the business more efficient. So what ended up happening was people would drive out to the lake, park their cars. They would get a little bit of instruction. Then we'd go out on the lake, and then they would come back for an hour and a half experience. And that ended up, you know, that was right where I wanted to be. The margins looked a lot better. It was a lot more efficient. There were a lot less moving parts. And so for someone that's just starting this out, I think that, you know, you have to go through that process of, yeah, you've got your little idea, but shape it out a little bit. I just did a show with a founder named Nick Bonfiglio. He's starting Sincari, and he gave some of the best advice, you know, I think I've ever heard. And I see this a lot in the tech founder space. We have this great idea, and we want to go raise money. Like, let's just go raise money so we can build it, so we can get it done. But what he actually talked about in his show was, you need to be a little bit more intentional than that. The first round, the first pre-seed round, is really there to validate the idea. Is there a need for this idea? Is there a demand for the idea itself? And so you've got to figure that out first. And that's part of what I'm talking about with business plans and user research. We're about to launch some tech, and we spent a lot of time. We spent about a year doing user research and having people try different things and getting feedback and things like that. So I think it's really important to validate the idea. And then from there, you know, the next round is going to be, okay, let's build the product and make sure that we have product market fit. And then from there, it's scale. So being able to compartmentalize and be disciplined about how you go about your raises, I think is really important. And again, that's going back to what Nick said. And I've heard a lot of advice in tech founders and raising money, but that was certainly the most pertinent advice that I'm planning to follow, and definitely is validated by my past experiences. So that's some advice I'd probably give somebody.
So I love what you're saying. So tell me, if you mentioned lean, and if I love to read, and I think you're a big reader too. If there was one book you said, hey, this is a book you need to read, in any type, any genre, whatever, what would be the book you would say, hey, read this?
Oh my gosh, like any book, not even related.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you feel like would be great for a founder.
Oh, okay. The book that's actually coming to mind, and it might be just because can I do two books?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm sure everyone out there has read this book, but a book I think that is really good is The E-Myth. The E-Myth is really good because it helps you identify maybe what kind of a person you are, you know, if you're a technician or if you, whatever kind of profile you can put yourself into, that's going to help you, I think, surround yourself with people that have what you don't have, which I think is really important. And then the other book that I think is really seminal is Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. Just talks about the economics of trust and building trusting relationships, and how important it is to how trust basically creates more efficient organizations, more effective and efficient organizations. And you can like map back trust exactly to economic impact, which is really cool, really fascinating book.
It makes a lot of sense with what you do, right? You helping people create those connections, create that trust. So
Yeah.
Last thing, I so much appreciate you coming on, but before we go, I do want to maybe those who don't know anything about the founders, the Tech Founder Circle, would you mind just giving just a quick little overview so people understand what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the Tech Founder Circle is something that I've been working with Neo ITO on. And, Fez and Joel came to me and they immediately saw the need for a circle of founders, of tech founders, to get together simply to collaborate. So forget about panelists, forget about speakers. Let's just get a group together and let's just get them to chat with each other and share best practices. And if I could share a story about that, I recently talked to a founder out of the Midwest. She was a beauty tech founder. And a lot of times I think that founders are kind of trapped geographically, right? So geographically, there's certain focuses on certain industries. But if you're a founder that has a focus on a different industry and it's not supported geographically to you, it makes it hard to connect with others. And that was her case. Where she was at, there were no other founders doing beauty tech. And of course, across the US, there are, but not there. And so when she found our group, she was actually able to connect with a few people that are working on in the same industry and get such invaluable feedback. And so that's really why we started the Tech Founder Circle. Is let's just hold a very quick meeting and let's gather these tech founders together that, one, value relationships, and two, are willing to talk and share best practices with each other. So kind of this mastermind group, and get them together on Zoom once a month. And it spans across, like I said, the US, it spans across geographies, simply to collaborate, share best practices, innovate, and do what I had said earlier, which is, become brokers. Because the only way for you to innovate is to get access to new ideas. The only way for you to get access to new ideas is to get access to new people. And so that's why we started the Tech Founder Circle. And it's one of my favorite groups. So I facilitate that event. And then we have a Discord channel where it's kind of like an asynchronous conference, where that's where we do bring in guest posts and we do bring in guest speakers. And then it's a place where founders can still stay connected with one another, that they meet at the meetings. And so it's that kind of an infrastructure that we're trying to create with this Tech Founder Circle.
And if somebody was interested in finding out more about it, what should they do?
They can certainly reach out to me. This is an invite-only group, but if you are a tech founder and you are interested, please just reach out to me. My email is paul@neoito.com, neoito.com. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. And then you can also check out our page. Maybe we can post that in the show notes. We do have a page, like an application page. So yeah, that would be the best way to reach in and get involved.
Well, I love it. Well, thanks so much for the first episode, and hope that those who watch this, they'll reach out to us and they can learn more about it.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thanks for the time, Michael. This is great.